Pope Benedict XVI died on Saturday, December 31st, at the age of 95. It's no exaggeration to say that his life and legacy, like that of St. John Paul the Great, his predecessor, will be felt throughout the Church and the world for centuries. The impact of Pope Benedict's long and devoted service to the Church is incalculable. In deep gratitude for his 71 years of priestly ministry, then, let us give thanks to God for such a humble and holy servant and dedicate our prayers tonight for the repose of his soul. It's simply not possible to do justice to Pope Benedict's life and legacy in the time we have tonight, but I would encourage you to find some faithful and reliable Catholic biographies and spend some time learning about his quite eventful life. It will give you a deeper appreciation of how God can bless the whole world through someone who has put his life entirely into his hands. And even better than that, read his books. Though a scholar of the highest caliber, he wrote many books that are accessible and quite readable by everyone. It's fitting, nevertheless, to recount some details of Pope Benedict's life, and since the novena that's usually held at this time is dedicated to Our Lady, it also seemed fitting to highlight some of his teachings and reflections on our Blessed Mother. Joseph Ratzinger was born on Holy Saturday in 1927 in Bavaria, Germany, and was baptized that same day. At age 5, he was with a group of children who were welcoming the Cardinal Archbishop of Munich to the city and was struck by the cardinal's distinctive garb. Later, he declared he wanted to be a cardinal too. Joseph came of age in wartime Germany, and due to his family's bitter opposition to the Nazis, his father, a policeman, was demoted, and the family was subjected to ongoing harassment. One of Joseph's cousins, a 14-year-old boy with Down syndrome, was murdered by the Nazis during one of their many eugenic cleansing campaigns. The brutality of the Nazi regime would later be a factor in Joseph deciding to become a priest. He was drafted into the army toward the end of World War II, but soon deserted and spent the last few months of war as an Allied prisoner. He entered seminary in 1945 and was ordained in 1951 by the very same cardinal he had seen and welcomed as a 5-year-old boy. Father Ratzinger recalled that, quote, "At the moment the elderly archbishop laid his hands on me, a little bird, perhaps a lark, flew up from the altar in the high cathedral and trilled a little joyful song," unquote. A gifted theologian, Father Ratzinger participated in the Second Vatican Council as a theological consultant and would spend the next 25 years in academia. Ironically, both he and the then Archbishop Karol Wojtyła, later Pope John Paul II, were considered liberal theologians at the council. Father Ratzinger was ordained a bishop by Pope Paul VI in May of 1977 and made a cardinal in June of that same year. In 1981, he was appointed prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith by Pope John Paul II, where he vigorously defended Catholic theology and moral doctrine. Though a paragon of orthodoxy and an ardent enemy of what he famously called the dictatorship of relativism, God's Rottweiler, as he was sometimes called, was by all accounts always courteous, as well as humble and even shy. Much different than he was painted by the media at the time. In what may be his most lasting legacy, Pope John Paul II appointed him as president of the Commission for drafting the Catechism of the Catholic Church. He served in that capacity from 1986 to 1992, and for this he is considered the father of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. His vision for the Catechism was to have the Church present the faith in its entirety, without addressing any controversies about the faith within the document itself, thereby entrusting the Church entirely to the power of a positive representation of the faith. This bold vision, without any qualification, has been a resounding success. Upon the death of Pope John Paul II in April 2005, Cardinal Ratzinger presided at his funeral mass. Less than 2 weeks later, he was elected the 265th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, selecting the name Benedict XVI. An ardent defender of the beauty of the sacred liturgy in both the ordinary and extraordinary forms, he allowed widespread celebration of the so-called Latin Mass. The Novus Ordo and the Latin Mass, he insisted, were but two expressions of a single Roman rite. In addition to his official documents, addresses, and homilies, he wrote books intended for the general public, including Jesus of Nazareth, Church Fathers and Teachers, Holy Men and Women, and many others. He guided the Church's continuing response to the horrific clergy child sexual abuse crisis. And in 2013, due to his declining health, he became the first pope in 600 years to resign the papacy. He will be numbered among the most ardent defenders of the faith and among the greatest popes of the Catholic Church. Let us now briefly consider Pope Benedict's reflections on Our Lady. Though not as prominent as St. John Paul the Great's devotion to Mary, Pope Benedict's devotion was just as fervent and deep. Of Our Lady, he wrote, quote, "Mary is the woman of hope. Mary is a woman of faith. Mary is a woman who loves. Mary has truly become the mother of all believers. Men and women of every time and place have recourse to her motherly kindness and her virginal purity and grace in all their needs and aspirations, their joys and sorrows, their moments of loneliness and their common endeavors. They constantly experience the gift of her goodness and unfailing love, which she pours out from the depths of her heart." Unquote. In an Angelus address at St. Peter's Square in 2011, Pope Benedict said the Beatitudes, which we read at the Gospel tonight, are a Christian's program of life, a program that enables us to free ourselves from the false values of the world and to open ourselves up to the true goods, present and future. He also taught that when Mary said her Magnificat, "My soul magnifies the Lord," she revealed her entire program of life. Namely, not setting herself at the center, but leaving space for God, who is encountered both in prayer and in service of neighbor. Mary's greatness, he said, consists in the fact that she wants to magnify God, not herself. She is lowly. Her only desire is to be the handmaid of the Lord, placing herself completely at God's disposal. In Mary, then, we see the very embodiment of the Beatitudes and the finest example of how to live out this program of life, this life of joy that Pope Benedict set before us. And the recipe for this life of joy, the Pope was known to say, can be found in how you spell joy. J, Jesus. O, others. Y, yourself. Jesus first, others next, ourself last of all. In this, the Pope concludes, Mary is the beautiful model for us all. I'll close by paraphrasing portions of a 1969 radio interview given 4 years after the closing of Vatican II, when Father Joseph Ratzinger spoke on the radio. His prophetic words are relevant for us today as they were back then. Father Ratzinger said, quote, "The future of the church can and will issue from those whose roots are deep and who live from the pure fullness of their faith. It will not issue from those who accommodate themselves to merely the passing moment, or from those who merely criticize others and assume that they themselves are some infallible measuring rod. Nor will it issue from those who take the easier road, who sidestep the passion of faith, declaring false and obsolete, tyrannous and legalistic, all that makes demands upon them, that hurts them, that compels them to sacrifice themselves." Put more positively, he continues, the future of the church, once again as always, will be reshaped by the saints, by men and women whose minds probe deeper than the slogans of the day, who see more than others see because their lives embrace a wider reality. Unselfishness, which makes men free, is attained only through the patience of small daily acts of self-denial. By this daily passion, which alone reveals to man in how many ways he is enslaved by his own ego, by this daily passion and it alone, a man's eyes are slowly opened. He sees only to the extent that he has lived and suffered. The church herself, he continues, will be a more spiritual church. Great power will flow from this more spiritualized and simplified church. In this church, the world will discover the little flock of believers as something wholly new. They will discover it as a hope that is meant for them, an answer for which they have been searching in secret, unquote. Let us conclude with a prayer for our beloved Pope, whose last words were, "Lord, I love you." Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord. May he rest in peace. Amen. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace.